On the morning of March 3, 2026, the U.S. Embassy in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, became the epicenter of a sudden and devastating attack. Iranian drones, flying low and undetected, struck the compound with precision, igniting fierce fires that quickly engulfed parts of the embassy grounds. The sound of explosions echoed across the city, shattering the usual calm and sending plumes of black smoke billowing into the sky. Panic swept through the Saudi capital as emergency vehicles raced toward the embassy, sirens blaring. Civilians, caught off guard by the sudden violence, watched in disbelief as the heart of their city was thrust into chaos. The attack sent shockwaves not only through Riyadh, but across the entire region, raising fears of further escalation. Although there were no immediate American casualties reported, the significance of the attack was unmistakable. This was not just an assault on a building, it was a direct strike against American presence in the heartland of a key ally. The embassy, a symbol of U.S. influence and partnership, now stood damaged and vulnerable, its flags fluttering amid the aftermath. In the hours that followed, U.S. officials moved swiftly, holding urgent press conferences and issuing immediate warnings to Americans living or traveling in the area. Emergency alerts flashed across smartphones, urging citizens to shelter in place or evacuate if possible. The message was clear: the threat was real, and the situation was rapidly evolving. This attack marked the second time in just 1 week that a U.S. embassy in the Gulf region had been targeted. Security was heightened, not only in Riyadh, but at diplomatic missions across the Middle East. The pattern was unmistakable. Iran was signaling its willingness to challenge U.S. presence and influence throughout the Gulf, raising the stakes for all involved. For residents of the Gulf, the strike shattered any lingering sense of safety or distance from the conflict. News coverage dominated television screens, and families anxiously checked on loved ones. Regional leaders convened urgent meetings grappling with the reality that war was no longer a distant threat, but a crisis unfolding on their very doorstep. As uncertainty and fear gripped the region, Gulf states now face a daunting challenge: how to balance their alliances, protect their citizens, and maintain stability amid a rapidly escalating conflict. The coming days will test the resolve and unity of regional leaders as they navigate an increasingly volatile landscape. The Riyadh drone strike is just one front in a rapidly expanding war, a conflict that has erupted with a ferocity few could have predicted. The city's skyline, once a symbol of stability, is now marked by the scars of sudden violence as emergency crews scramble to respond to the chaos. This war began only days ago, ignited by a series of coordinated U.S.-Israeli airstrikes deep inside Iran. The world watched in shock as fighter jets streaked across the desert, unleashing bombs on Iranian military targets, signaling a new and dangerous phase in regional hostilities. The assassination of Iran's supreme leader was intended as a decisive blow, a move calculated to cripple Iran's leadership. Instead, it has triggered a tidal wave of unrest and violence, with mass mourning in Tehran and protests erupting across the Middle East. The shockwaves have reached far beyond Iran's borders, destabilizing an already fragile region and drawing in new actors by the day. Today, Israel confirmed a full-scale ground invasion into southern Lebanon, aiming to halt relentless Hezbollah rocket attacks. Armored columns now roll through rural fields, and soldiers advance cautiously, bracing for a drawn-out guerrilla war that threatens to entangle both nations in a cycle of violence with no easy exit. Meanwhile, U.S.-Israeli airstrikes continue to pound Iranian territory, focusing on military infrastructure but inevitably striking civilian neighborhoods. The relentless bombardment has left entire city blocks in ruins, forcing families to flee their homes in search of safety. The human cost of this conflict is staggering. Hospitals are overwhelmed with the injured, and aid workers struggle to provide relief as hundreds have already lost their lives. Thousands more are now refugees, forced to abandon everything and seek shelter in overcrowded camps, their futures uncertain. What began as a targeted military campaign has spiraled into a regional catastrophe. Diplomats are evacuating, negotiation tables sit empty, and the hope for peace grows dimmer with each passing day. The machinery of diplomacy has ground to a halt, replaced by the relentless drumbeat of war. Now the entire Middle East is engulfed in conflict, with fires burning from Lebanon's fields to Iran's skies. As military convoys move through the desert and cities smolder under plumes of smoke, the region faces an uncertain future, one where the end of war seems nowhere in sight. Israel's ground incursion into Lebanon follows a barrage of Hezbollah missile and drone attacks on Israeli bases. Israeli forces have responded with devastating airstrikes, evacuating villages and targeting Hezbollah's leadership and infrastructure. Southern Beirut is deserted, and the death toll in Lebanon is rising rapidly. Israel's strategy aims to cripple Hezbollah's command and finances, striking banks and media outlets. The violence has displaced tens of thousands and reignited old hostilities, trapping civilians in a relentless cycle of retaliation. Each side's escalation only deepens the conflict with no easy exit. For those living near the front lines, daily life is now defined by fear and uncertainty. In the wake of US-Israeli strikes, Iran has unleashed a sweeping and coordinated campaign of vengeance, targeting American and Israeli interests across the Middle East. This is not a single act of retaliation, but a sustained effort designed to send a clear message to Washington and Tel Aviv. Any attack on Iran will be met with forceful and far-reaching consequences. The region is now gripped by a new wave of uncertainty, as Iran's military and its network of proxies mobilize for a campaign that spans borders and threatens to upend the fragile balance of power. US military bases in the Gulf are now under constant threat, with heightened security and soldiers on high alert. The first American combat fatalities have been reported in Kuwait, marking a grim milestone and underscoring the seriousness of the escalation. For US personnel stationed across the region, every day brings new dangers, as attacks become more frequent and unpredictable. The sense of vulnerability is palpable, and the risk of further casualties looms large. Iran's strategy is clear: make the US presence in the Middle East untenable by inflicting steady casualties and ramping up political pressure. Through a combination of direct attacks and orchestrated protests, Tehran aims to erode American resolve and force a reconsideration of its military footprint. The psychological toll on troops and diplomats is mounting as the threat environment grows more complex and volatile with each passing day. Israeli cities are also under relentless missile attack, with air raid sirens blaring and civilians scrambling for shelter. Daily life has been thrown into chaos, as families seek safety underground and the specter of violence hangs over every neighborhood. The Israeli government is struggling to reassure its citizens, even as the threat of further escalation remains ever present. Tehran is leveraging its vast arsenal of missiles, drones, and regional proxies to raise the cost of war for its adversaries. From sophisticated weaponry paraded through the streets of Tehran to shadowy militant groups operating in urban centers, Iran's reach is extensive and its tactics increasingly bold. The use of drones and precision-guided munitions has added a new dimension to the conflict, making it harder for enemies to predict or counter Iran's moves. The entire region has become a battlefield, with every nation now at risk of being drawn into Iran's campaign of retaliation. Borders offer little protection as violence spills over, and alliances are tested by the rapidly shifting landscape. The possibility of a wider regional war is no longer a distant fear, but a looming reality that threatens to engulf the Middle East in chaos. As the conflict expands, the hope for stability in the region grows ever more remote. Cities lie in ruins, streets are deserted, and civilians watch the news with mounting anxiety, uncertain of what tomorrow will bring. The campaign of vengeance has set the Middle East on a dangerous new course, with no clear end in sight. As the war drags on, US and Israeli leaders have shifted their justifications and timelines. What began as a limited operation is now acknowledged as a potentially prolonged conflict. Conflicting goals, regime change, nuclear containment, or empowering Iranian dissent, have muddied the mission's purpose. The lack of a clear strategy has fueled skepticism at home and abroad. Leaders now face the reality that initial objectives have given way to a chaotic, open-ended war. The gap between promises of a swift victory and the messy reality grows wider each day. The region's future is more uncertain than ever. The war's economic shockwaves are global, reverberating across continents and affecting millions of lives. Iran has closed the Strait of Hormuz, threatening to attack any vessel that challenges the blockade, choking off a vital oil route for the world. Retaliatory strikes have halted production at major energy facilities in Qatar and Saudi Arabia, sending prices soaring to unprecedented levels. The resulting energy crisis threatens economies worldwide, risking inflation, recession, and widespread hardship for ordinary people. Iran is weaponizing its geography and military to pressure the world into forcing a de-escalation of the conflict, but this gamble risks a broader confrontation and a prolonged global downturn. with consequences that could last for years. The economic fallout is now inseparable from the conflict itself, shaping the future in unpredictable ways. Amid the chaos, Lebanon's government has banned Hezbollah's military activities, seeking to reclaim national sovereignty and avoid further devastation. Enforcing this ban is fraught with risk, as Hezbollah remains deeply entrenched and powerful. The move signals a desperate desire to break free from proxy warfare, but could spark internal conflict. Across the region, alliances are shifting and old certainties are gone. The war's escalation has redrawn the map of influence, not by diplomacy, but by force. As of March 3, 2026, the Middle East stands on the brink, with escalation far more likely than peace. The coming days will determine whether the region can pull back or plunge deeper into catastrophe. If you found this deep dive insightful, please like, share, and subscribe for more updates. Let us know your thoughts on the situation in the comments below. What do you think the future holds for the Middle East?